Thanks for coming back from lunch, everybody. It is my privilege to chat with this illustrious crew here, way smarter than me, about like the real core storytelling piece of branded content. I think, as Mike said before we broke for lunch, now we're getting into kind of all about production. And I'm going to try and start a little bit loftier. We may cover a little bit of ground that we've done before with defining branded content, but then get into the weeds of production, budgets, how we integrate together with all these disparate groups that are working with brands, to agencies, to production partners. And at any point, I would love to push you guys to do, as a friend of mine posted this morning, he suggested that good arguments are where a lot of progress is made. On Twitter, he said, we have to start getting better with healthy tension and passionately held views. So if at any point you disagree, I would love this panel to be you guys shouting out, or save it for the breakouts if you don't want to just break us apart here. But I'll stop there.
That's an invitation.
He's got a mic. You want to jump in and disagree? A healthy debate, that would be fantastic. Let me tee up the team here and ask for intros. Lou Henderson from the marketing arm.
Yeah, Lou Henderson. I've been in the entertainment, digital marketing space my whole career. Started the William Morris agency in the mailroom. Wrote a business plan to start our first digital department. Got approved, so I got promoted to run that, start that. Did that for 18 years. Was also part of the team that started our corporate consulting practice. And Anheuser-Busch was one of our first clients. My first branded content project was with Anheuser-Busch. In 1996, we partnered with Brandon Tartikoff to create a 1-hour drama with Busch Gardens called Second Noah. Ran for 2 years. 2009, I was recruited to be CEO of Davy Brown Entertainment. It was Omnicom's first entertainment marketing acquisition. Later got rolled up under the marketing arm, so that's why we're the marketing arm today. Predominantly a product placement and entertainment marketing services company. When I got there, just saw the opportunity in creating content, so started our creative and production capability. First client was Unilever. We got really lucky. We were asked to help build a couple digital pieces of content for Dove Men Plus Care. Those 3 kind of docu-style pieces got turned into then 18 TV commercials, which we did for the next 18 months. Along the way, did Uncle Drew and Test Drive 2 for clients like Pepsi. Did a couple Super Bowl spots, a couple digital series, and about 250 other pieces of content. As of Tuesday, as I've told some of you, I will no longer be at the marketing arm. There'll be a client of mine, but I'm starting a company called Purpose Content to work closely with entertainment talent, that kind of going back to my William Morris days, to package and produce content for brands and for platforms.
Nice. Brendan Gaul from UM. Brendan, will you be at UM next week?
I will. I'm actually coming up on 15 years at IPG and at UM. I started my career there actually at McCann Erickson on the traditional advertising side as a creative director on Johnson & Johnson. We were starting to do a lot of innovative work in media and around the content space. And then back in 2005, when there was a media consolidation, we pitched the business and created the agency J3. At that point, I moved over there and was the creative director of J3, running content across the 50 J&J brands for almost 10 years. And then about 2 years ago, came over to the bigger UM side, and I lead global content there as the head of UM Studios, which is our content arm.
That's good. Michal Shapira from Turner.
Yeah. Hi, guys. So I've been with Turner for about 3 years. I run what's called content partnerships for the news division of Turner. So that's CNN, HLN, and Great Big Story. And content partnerships is really the marketing function on the ad sales side of the business. So my team is responsible for coming up with strategic ideas for our advertisers that leverage our assets and properties. And about 2 years ago, in June of 2015, I launched Courageous, which some of you may have heard of. It is CNN's first in-house brand studio. I hired a guy named Otto Bell to be the group creative director, and together we've built that team to be a 30-person operation today, executing hundreds of videos to date for clients. And so really proud of the work that I've done there, and actually working with some of my esteemed panelists here on a regular basis, so feel very fortunate about that. Prior to that, I've been in media pretty much my entire career. I was at the Wall Street Journal. I ran Condé Nast Studio when there was Condé Nast Digital. Really started my career in digital at iVillage.com, if any of you remember that site. Went on to AOL from there. So always been, in marketing. Very shortly after I started my career, moved into this sort of sales marketing, and been doing branded content for a while, even before it was really called that. So.
Awesome.
And Kevin, our representative from the client side up here from Sleep Number.
Right. Well, first off, just thank you for letting the brand guy be up here. So appreciate that. And my name is Kevin Brown. My Sleep Number setting is a 35.
Yes.
My sleep IQ score for the month of July is running around a 68. So that's my quality sleep. Got 3 Rugrats at home. So, 2 Rugrats and 1 19-year-old, which is big kids, big problems, little kids, little problems. I am the Chief Marketing Officer for Sleep Number. You've seen the corporate name is Select Comfort, but in fourth quarter we're getting 100% behind the brand. So, and we've been Sleep Number brand since, I want to say 09 and 10. We're vertically integrated. We make the beds. We distribute the beds, and we have 550 stores nationwide. So there's your invite to come find your Sleep Number setting and improve your life. And Nick, I don't know if I'm going to get ahead of you on this, but we were talking about how do we want to kick this thing off, and you mentioned ferocious debate and that sort of thing. So maybe I'll throw the first one down.
I love it.
And we were talking like, okay, what's from the brand side, what is it that's the biggest challenge? And apart from my internal challenges of winning the hearts and minds of not only my management and board, but my team, who you think would be the most inspired to do this, they're really stuck in an interruptive world, and that's what they know, and they're really good at it. But getting them inspired to try something different is a challenge. But I'd say what I'm looking for, and what I'm so thankful to meet so many of you guys up here, and it's my second time at this conference, is we need something that inspires. We talked a lot about storytelling. I need something that inspires, because inspiration will get you internally motivated to do something about it, right? And at the end of the day, I got to ring the till. We got to pay the bills. We got to sell product. It's not always a straight line. It's not the first. You're not going to get inspired and then go right to the store. But I do have to get you to think and feel differently after you view the stories that we're going to create together, right? Mm-hmm. Right, Michal?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
That's right.
Michal, what's your biggest challenge, just to echo off Kevin there? What you mentioned building with Otto, I know what you're doing at Courageous. You said kind of quickly, we make videos there. You guys don't. Really what you and Otto have been able to do is, I think, to step toward that almost highfalutin term we use sometimes of storytelling, right? It's not just videos. I think you're digging into deeper stories. What's your biggest challenge when people come to you overall or at Courageous for brand storytelling?
You're asking me?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
I can answer it for you.
No. I think that the biggest challenge, just in general, for us and everybody, is standing out. Just doing something that stands out. We've been talking about this for the past few days. There's just a sea of branded content out there, a sea of branded content creators. And for us, the market is pretty saturated with brand studios at competing media companies. And so, when we set up Courageous, we knew that. We knew we had to do something that was different, that stood out. And so what we do, and the way we approach it, is through this sort of unique point of view of brand journalism. So, and this is something Otto and I kind of crafted, and we hired people specifically with that in mind. We hired Emmy and Murrow award-winning journalists who were sort of serving in that capacity in editorial at other companies, and we're going to take, all of their skills and everything they've learned and everything they do on a daily basis and come and apply it now to brands. And so what does that mean? What we do is we really sort of apply those investigative tactics. We do extensive research on every brief, every pitch that we get. to get to the heart of a story, or to come up with a story that's never been told, or a unique angle on an existing story that perhaps has been told. We really employ that sort of brand journalism in everything that we do, and we specialize specifically then in video, so we execute it then in video format. And the work is really resonating, I think, because of that, and because we've sort of carved out this niche for ourselves where we're not trying to be everything to everyone. We're really deliberately going after sort of that specific space. And so I think standing out is a big deal. And then I would add distribution to that, for the majority of creators. And for us, although in theory that's not an issue because CNN, it has such a massive footprint, when you're talking digital, social, but even obviously television, and a lot of our work is actually going on television now. But it's still, I think, a strategic challenge in terms of how to look at every single program that we do and come up with the right distribution plan for that particular program. So it's the right idea, but also the right mix of placements and platforms, and how to tailor the idea to those platforms. So I would say those are sort of the two things that we work on every day.
Brendan, you and I work in the same building, so we get to commiserate often on the biggest problems. So I'm not sure what yours is. You probably heard mine a lot, which is, I'm going to say, probably budgets most of the time.
Budgets, yeah.
But from your end, what's the biggest challenge for you in storytelling, in that word, in branded content, meaning telling deeper, engaging stories the right way that are non-interrupted? Like, what's the thing you want to solve most?
I think the biggest thing that we come up against, the biggest hurdle, I think, is having everyone within kind of an integrated agency and client world understand that what we're trying to do from a content space is not replace advertising, that it's additive, right? I think that there's a lot of tension between agencies or points of view, and even from partners, right? We're trying to protect you guys from clients that really just want you to make a commercial for them, and we. I think of it like think about the Nissan work yesterday, right? And the franchise of Star Wars, right? If you take a brand ad, right, and you treat it like almost like an entertainment franchise, like what's the courageous way to tell that story? What's the NBC way to tell that story? What's the Condé way to tell that story? How's an influencer going to tell that story? It's going to be different. And I think that's the role of my team as a creative group at a media agency, is to really find that authentic voice in media that's going to hit the high value audience, and then allowing them to tell the brand story in their way, right? We have to protect the brand story, but we also have to protect the partner's point of view on the world and how they come together to tell that story in a meaningful way. And it's a difficult concept to grasp if people are entering the conversation trying to protect an idea that currently lives in a 30-second spot, or an idea that currently lives in a print ad or in a manifesto film. I think about, I'm going to a theater reference for a second, right? So like Stephen Sondheim did West Side Story in 1957, and he had like full control when it went to Broadway, right? And then the film, and he had pretty much control in the film. And then like every community theater and high school out there is doing it, and they're doing it in their own way. And he can't control that, right? The media community is so large and so vast. And I think that an idea really has wings and legs when other creatives want to put their spin on it and make it additive. And I think if we take that point of view on creative work, it leads to better work and a healthier collaborative relationship.
Lou, I'd love you to answer this one too, and then I'll ask some questions we can jump around. But.
The biggest challenge for me is craft services. I love it. I can't stop eating it.
That's it. No, that's it.
That's it. We'll keep moving. But it's probably what you were going to say too. It's the budget. It's just how the process of when people are coming into it for the first time, and how they're getting paid, and how you pay out the production company, and the timing of all that. Still a lot of work that needs to be done, and we use a lot of talent. So there's also then after the fact, it's a lot of work there. So just aligning on what all those are.
I'd love to jump to Rick's T-shirt, "Don't Interrupt," and kind of the question for you guys. Is the goal in brand content, I mean, part of coming out of here for 3 days, are we going to put a stake in the ground and say that, oh, that's interruptive and we should really push down this highway of don't interrupt? Is that a lead message that you kind of can get behind? Is that a goal for brand content and storytelling in brand content, to do things that aren't interruptive to the audience but embracing them? Anybody want to take that?
I think, we talk a lot about that. And I think, we're having to cater to this audience. And what do they want? And I think you've seen some ads. I talk about kids. I have a 10 and 8-year-old, and we always say, yeah, they just want to watch YouTube. But, when they watch TV, and I remember that Kia commercial that came out with black sheep and, with the gerbils or the hamsters or dancing, they would run to the TV and be like, oh my God, play it, stop daddy, play it back. So there are obviously commercials that we all like and they serve their purpose. I think, we're looking at an industry now which is needing to find a way to connect better, and interruption seems to be, part of that seems to be the problem. So how can you work around that? I don't know that it means you can't still create the great content that does interrupt, but it just sends the right message and really addresses that audience and lets them know that you understand them and it's something that they would like. I think that's the shift, right?
Yeah, I'd just jump in and a little bit different take than Lewis's is that from the brand side, the interruptive advertising, it works. And we've been spending years and years on tools and how to optimize every channel and every dollar that we spend. And so the next dollar spent there, it's really tough to get a really big bang for your time, effort, and talents. And I see brand storytelling as a way to accelerate the brand's relevance and being a part of a customer's or a consumer's everyday life. And that's how I see branded content. It's lower fidelity branded. So if you think the stuff that I put out on television and our print ads and all of that is at 90. This is going to be lower than that, in terms of being brand in your face, but it's going to be told in such an authentic way, as we've talked about for a couple of days now, that it could only come from Sleep Number. And that's my bar. It's like, and we've talked about this with the team, right? It's like, don't pitch me stories that could come from any one of my competitors. It could be a story that could only be told by Sleep Number.
Yeah. I agree. I mean, I think that there's a continuum of this kind of content space, right? And I think that the core there is around entertainment, right? Like often people call it branded content and entertainment, and I think that the entertainment piece is the one that's really important, right? That's what gets you to that non-interruptive space. And our team does, we do big original content productions, where brands are funding films that are meant to be sold at distribution at festival, but a lot of, I think the most accessible way to do it is through media partnerships, right? And before I talked about that concept of an authentic voice in media, right? So brands that historically have been doing interruptive advertising, and which is content, how do they start to create content that is non-interruptive, content that their consumer and their high-value audience wants to see, right? And we believe that it's like that concept of not being invited to the party, right? And before you're invited to the party, you need to kind of go as somebody's plus one. So if that high-value audience is on CNN, we're going to create content with Courageous to be brought along to that party until we build enough credibility as brands to start throwing our own parties. And that's when you move into that kind of original content space. But at the beginning, you've got to find the right partners and that right authentic voice that's going to bring you along. The audiences are coming to see what Turner's creating, and we want to be a part of that, and we want to figure out how our brand stories integrate and can collaborate and produce something beautiful together within the Turner voice, in this example. Taking a brand, doing something long form, and then just kind of sticking it out there in the world on like an open platform, then you're going to actually have to put a lot more media behind it, and you're really just buying those views. It's the old advertising model translated to content. So the entertainment space is really where you want to be.
And so, Michal, I mean, that's a great example. You know your audience. Brendan comes to you. Is it so you're creating for your audience, I would say
that's right.
primarily. Is it a shift for all of us as agency side, as brand side, to start thinking, we've talked a little bit about the importance of the brief. We still need to know the brand's place, Kevin, to your point, how we're digging at that. But is it just a mental shift from creating for the brand and for the agency to creating for the audience and knowing who you're making it for? Do we need to shift to that's the person I'm actually talking to?
Yeah, I mean, I think we think about that very carefully, and it's our audience on our O&O, but then also, out in social, and I think you can find other like-minded audiences as well. But, that's at the core of really, the idea that you're going to put out there. It has to speak to them. It has to be authentic. It has to feel, genuine, and so it's engaging. But I would even add another layer to it, which is that, the brand can't get left out of that, right? It also has to, apply to some brand message or some objective that the brand has, whether it's changing its perception or improving its brand image or highlighting some kind of attribute or value. And so you want to create something that is engaging, that people are going to want to watch or interact with. But it also, at the end of the day, has to connect in some way in the viewer's mind to something that you're trying to tell them about the brand. And so they have to walk away with some meaningful connection there too. So we look at it from sort of all directions.
Yeah, and if I can jump in, I mean, when we see that done very well, we've seen that when content like that is then attached to traditional advertising, it makes the advertising work anywhere from 6 times to 12 times stronger, right? Because it's really using the content to set up the proposition or even set up the problem that then the ad is going to solve.
Yeah, and I think also, attaching that to other activation that the brand is doing, and how do you really look at it across the board and all the touch points that they're looking for. But I couldn't agree more. This isn't about the brand going away. It's finding how to attach the brand the right way and making that connection, and then hopefully building off of that. But everything that we've all said is like, first of all, it's got to be good. It's got to be authentic. It's got to feel like it's coming from for the audience in a way from the brand that they'll like it.
Yeah. So I'll dig into a word you just threw out there, content, right? I feel like that distances us. Brendan threw it out there. He said content. This thing of it distances us from storytelling, like immediately. And my soapbox is that word content, it just means so much, right? So at the core of it, that content is a creative idea, right? I mean, you can call Get Out content, but it is a very specific creative idea inside the horror genre, inside movie making. And we have the same thing here. I'll give Rupert a shout out if he's here, but lo and behold, the documentary film, we can talk platform and media, but that content is one idea. For all of you guys, or maybe I'll start with you, Kevin, at Brand, who do you want to own, forgetting that we all want to integrate, we all want to work with you, do you want one core group to own one creative idea to you, or do you want disparate people coming to the table?
I've got an abundance mentality when it comes to ideas, so and I don't know if that's different than other folks in the room, but I don't care where the idea comes from, and so I want to cast the net really wide, and it's more of a portfolio approach. I think in terms of generating the idea, right, and getting everyone to really, and back to your point about it's about the consumer, and so we're all on the same team. Whether you're from Courageous or you're from the rest of our companies here. We're all in service of the customer. So I tend to think that the ideas can come from anywhere. You have to have some sort of guardrails around it, otherwise you'll never get anything off the ground. And then when it gets into execution, I think that can be, I expect it to be collaborative between the brand and our partners, and we really use the word partners in a big way. We don't do transactional stuff. It's, we might be working on a project, but we're thinking 2 or 3 years down the road, what is this relationship going to look like? So, but you have to be clear on who's owning, moving things through. So I don't have a clear point of view on who. That could be me, or it could be Michal, or it could be Brendan. It doesn't matter to me. I just want to know that we're all in service of the same thing, and we're accountable to each other. Yeah. So a little bit different take on it.
Brendan, in your experience, who leads? And Is there a best
Who leads?
situation?
Wow. I mean, honestly, I think the best situation, and I'm glad you said sometimes it's you, is when the client leads, right? I think that there's an old model around the creative director at the traditional agency owns the brand. And I think that I've seen it work best when actually the client owns the brand, right? The client, it doesn't defer to any agency. They know their brand inside and out, and they know what's right for it, right? And they can bring a team of experts together in an open architecture way to execute on whatever the idea is that lands, right? I think if you break down just kind of getting into lanes for a second, I've seen it work best when the advertising agency does own that brand idea, right? And then sitting at a media agency, we have all the data and insights around the audience that you're trying to reach. So we come up with or create a complementary media idea that then we can turn on through a number of creative partners, be it talent partners, media partners, or production partners. And JC from New Forms here, we did a successful campaign on the Tylenol brand a few years back. And the brand idea there that's led by JWT is for what matters most. And then when you go and you talk to their high value audience of moms, what matters most is family. So that opens the door for us to do a documentary series about the changing face of family in America, which answers that question of for what matters most, which is being hammered home in the traditional advertising space. That's the way that I've seen it work best, is when it's a bit of a two-hander.
Yeah, I would agree that the brand really does. They control the brand. They know who they are. I think you have to develop that trust as you work with different agencies. I'm all for the jump ball. I love that concept. I guess it's come from the entertainment side where you're always just doing jump balls. But once that decision has been made and you're working very closely with the brand, I also, I believe in the creative spirit, that if, this is the idea, that you got to let them execute on that. And obviously doing that with the brand, but at some point that trust will get there where they say, I get it. I know that you know my brand. So take a couple, maybe take a couple risks. And I say risk with a little caution, but knowing that creatively it's going to come out in a better way. I think we have worked with projects where there's just too many chefs in the kitchen, and it just gets really, really bad. When we've had a just clear connection with the brand and we're able just to step away, check in from time to time, but they trust that we know their brand and what we're going to do with it, that helps. Now, the other partners come in for their roles, most definitely, but I think whoever comes up with the idea, and that's the winning idea, I think they should lead that idea. And that typically is coming from the creative agency. We weren't a creative agency when we first started doing that, but we aligned with what they were saying and what they knew about the brand. But I think once you've made that decision, I think it's important that you let that team go and do it.
Yeah, I'd also say there's another piece of it around the business side, which we touched on yesterday, right? And it's around who owns and controls that IP and who owns and controls those contracts, right? So I found on our bigger campaigns having a quarterback that sits within media because they understand all the places that the talent may be called upon to show up, or all the places that the assets may need to travel across a plan, and having them integrate with a retail team and for appearances and things, a PR team, and any other team is really helpful, right? I think that you need to have someone on the team that is looking at the investment you're making in content and making sure that you're maximizing that investment, that what you're building has legs that can move across any channel and across the entirety of the plan. And some agencies are set up to do that better than others, and some partners are open to those kinds of deals and some aren't.
Yeah, we always say don't put all the green on the screen, right? It's got to be, that's where the other partners can really come in and help, and how does it attach to other marketing programs that are going, and that's where we really like to collaborate, knowing that we've been briefed and we understand and we've proven that we understand the brand. What are the other touch points that we could help to amplify as well? And that takes budget. And we've created things, I think in the last several years, we have a lot of people who, they just want to create a piece of content. And you go create a good piece of content, and sometimes it falls on its face because you don't have those other, wheels helping to move it along.
So I have a lot of questions coming out of there, but you guys have taken it to budget, so I think we should move there. And I should ask, this, Brendan, you mentioned maximizing the investment, and I could ask where the budgets come from, where should they come from, but I think mainly with the time we have, the question I have is, I think my personal point of view is that we're coming to a time when there's so many different ways to communicate with audiences that maybe pulling from traditional ways we've done to make bets in new ways is what needs to happen next. Would you agree that the future of this kind of branded content is a budget discussion and needs to be a reallocation of more money into this space? Or do you feel we're going to continue to carve out dollars to try and do this, or do we need to kind of come into this space and spend more money here to do it right?
I think that's a decision that really does have to start at the very top, because it's not just about dedicating more dollars. It's, going all in. If you're going to create content, some of the best creators in the world, they've got more bombs than they do successes. And when you're getting into what we're talking about, truly creating entertainment, right? And no one sets out to not create something that doesn't hit, but sometimes it happens. It's really that mentality coming from the top. Are they willing to kind of go all in and accept that this is part of it? It's a totally different business, right? And I found that sometimes smaller, more nimble brands are able to get there faster. And I get it if you're a publicly traded company and all of a sudden you start saying, hey, we're going to become a studio. And you don't want them looking at like, well, here's a studio stock and here's your stock. What's going on? So there's a lot of things that you have to really pay attention to. But I think it's a much bigger conversation up top to say, we're getting into this. And if that's the case, then yes, you have to allocate budget. You have to set something aside that's not attached to other pieces, I believe. That those budgets are there to continue to try to support that idea. But you're getting into the business of creating content. And that is a totally different business and has totally different implications than just trying to put a budget over here and play around. I think we're seeing a lot of that. And we've seen some brands in the last year or more that have come out and said, we're doing a studio. I've worked with two of the brands that are doing it. I'm really curious, and I hope that this is a long-term play, because it needs to be if it's going to be successful.
I think you have to follow the data and the KPIs and the performance, right? So I don't think that it can be all in and like suddenly you're just making all this content, right? I think about a campaign that I did a few years ago with one of the Johnson & Johnson brands, and they had decided that they wanted to take 25% of their ad budget and put it towards content versus traditional advertising. And it performed very well. The next year, it went to 50-50, and then in the third year, fourth year, and fifth year, it stayed at 75% in content, 25% in the traditional advertising. And it was because they took a step in, and they saw what was working, and then optimized the budgets to make sure that they were getting the highest ROI on their spend, right? I think that don't get into content if it's not going to move your business, right? Just because it's like the in vogue thing to do. I think you have to figure out what's working, test it, and then throw gas on the fire, and then get it really moving. But I am seeing more and more clients that have done something in a traditional format for a few years, and they're seeing that return is flat and that it's not moving the needle forward for them. So they're starting to reallocate some of those budgets that were for traditional advertising and putting them into bigger bets in the content space.
I want to clarify. When I say going all in, it's more from a mindset than it is from a budget.
Fair.
Right?
Yep.
So that it's like, yes, we're going to try this, and we're going to get behind it, and we know the ups and the downs, but I totally agree. You don't have to put your whole budget over there. No one should do that. But it is kind of agreeing, okay, we're going to go play in this area, and we're going to stick to it.
Yeah, I agree. And everybody has to be all in on it, right? You can't, like anybody on that integrated team, including the clients and the agency partners, have to be like, we're all going to win at it or we're all going to fail at it together. Otherwise, it's just people are just going to pick it apart and the product's going to suffer.
I actually have an interesting story to share along those lines. We were working, and I told one or two people here already, so apologies to them for hearing it twice, but we were working with a client, Square Enix, who's a video game manufacturer, and they actually came to us and said, we're putting out a new game. It's called Deus Ex: Mankind Divided, and we want to buy a homepage takeover on CNN.com on a certain date, the day that the video game comes out. So we got the brief, and we're sitting around and courageous. We got a little pod of folks sitting around brainstorming about this homepage takeover. And they did their brand journalism thing, and they went and did some research and found out that there's the main theme of the game. It's set in the future in 2029, where mankind is essentially divided into two camps. One camp are people who have augmented their bodies with technology and have essentially become cyborgs, and the other camp are people who haven't done that. And so they started digging into this theme, this topic, and just found that there was actually a lot of dialogue happening in academia and certain circles. So we went back to them with this concept and said, we could do a homepage takeover, and this is what it would look like. Great if that's what you want, but if you want to go a little bit beyond that, we think this theme is fascinating. And what we would propose is maybe doing some kind of event, sort of in a thought leadership kind of vein, and inviting experts in this space to come and participate and have conversation about this. There's so much to talk about, from sort of the ethical standpoint of things to the science of things to, there's actually hate crimes against cyborgs. There's a whole conversation happening that very few people really know about. So we did it. They jumped on. They said, oh my gosh, that sounds like a great idea. And we shot video at the conference that we held. We invited, academics and scientists and, various experts in this space, and we shot video, we distributed the video. They loved it so much that they were doing a partnership with Amazon, and they asked us to put together a 30-minute documentary on this subject, separate from this campaign, and yet threw more money at it even. And we went and shot that totally separately, in 4 different countries over a 6-week span. It's on the Amazon Prime. So it became a much bigger, sort of branded content initiative when it really started out with a very simple transactional type of RFP that was just like, we want a homepage takeover on your site. So, I thought that was a really good example of kind of convincing them to go all in. And the client, the day of the event, was like, this is the best day of my career. So they were very pleased overall.
I don't know how I followed that story up. But on your original question, I don't think you've got to switch buckets. I think everything's got to stand on its own. As long as it's producing, positive shareholder return, you keep fueling it. The challenge is, as you guys pointed out, is you got to peel off enough for test and learn, and you got to have the organization wired that says, you're going to fail 8 out of 10 times, until you figure it out, and then your batting average will get better. And what's a good batting average, right? 300. If I'm batting 3 out of 10, that's good. Mm-hmm. So we need to keep. It's about at bats. That's what it's all about.
I love the idea that, Michal, you just brought up of this larger story, trying to get to something bigger, and that's almost a lot of what we've been talking about over the last couple days, stepping back to a deeper brief, really understanding what this is about. But your point on the Deus example, or I even think about something like Campfire, division of Publicis, they did a project called Resistance Radio for Amazon Studios for Man in High Castle. It got to the loftier narrative to do something. It wasn't just expressing what the show was about. It was expressing the ideas of the show in a different channel, which is really interesting. My question is, how do brands succeed in this space? Is it that? And Kevin, from your perspective, can any brand succeed in this space? Or do you have to be the legacy of Patagonia, the craft of Yeti coolers, the size of Nike? Or can anyone do that if you get to a loftier idea?
No, I firmly believe everybody can get there. You have to understand your brand. We talked about earlier, you have to know who you're speaking to. And so once you know that, then then what you're saying has to have meaning. Like and that meaning is what you're talking about, and that's going to hit somebody really deep, right? When I kicked things off and said it has to be inspirational, and then it follows up with how do you tell the story, and where do you place it, right? But I don't think you see it every day. I don't think you've got to have scale. We're a small brand, we're not the size of Nike, but I would argue we're doing leading edge stuff, and that's why I'm here, and nobody can accuse me of never losing sight of the shore. I'm willing to take risks, right? This may not seem like a big risk that we're doing, but it's different for us.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think when we started ideating And actually, for Uncle Drew, that came from an internal brainstorm that we had an idea that we just kind of kept there, and we thought we would find the right opportunity. But when Pepsi Max came to us and said, that's not a big brand, and the way that they just wanted some ideas, and they knew that they didn't have a lot of money to support it, we kind of pitched it out there. I agree, everyone can, as long as you commit to the authenticity, your audience, and in that case, budget didn't really seem to matter, right? This, a lot of people know this. Uncle Drew was done for under $100,000. You can get to an idea as long as people are all kind of bought in.
Yeah, and real quick, just to jump in, I absolutely agree. I think any brand can do it, and I think the reason that any brand can do it is because brands exist because people need things, right? And people are inherently interesting. So if you can dig into that high-value audience, see what makes them tick, you can unlock stories that align back to that brand. But I think that if you're a brand that's struggling with the story, is look at who you exist for, because there are a lot of stories there.
Yesterday in our breakout, Edna from Michelin had a great quote that I just liked because it challenged agencies to have courage. I think it's a two-way path there. I think we have to have courage, propose the right solutions, and then clients have to greenlight risk, right? But I want to ask you guys about that courage to Kevin's point of getting to the loftier. If you're brought in late, say you guys are brought in a little bit late to the game here, how do we have the courage to go like, wait a second, that might not be the story we want to tell. I'm going to take a little time and try to get you guys to back up and greenlight an Uncle Drew, or to do something like, I know you asked for a web page takeover. How in branded content do we come in a little bit late, which is when a lot of us are asked in, and have the courage to raise our hands and go in, that's maybe not the thing you guys should be doing?
I mean, it's something, I think, if I look back at those opportunities when we have had that courage, we've had more success than failure. I think once you understand the brand and you feel strong about the ideas that you can bring to the table, it's just, what is that best idea? And listen, we've pitched those ideas, maybe they didn't pick them up, but you gotta pitch them, right? I mean, you've gotta kind of feel the courage to go and pitch them, and thankfully, sometimes they get picked up. And we'll come at it from, a bunch of different positions. Jingle Punks was here. We had to go to those guys and say, let's come up with a music idea. They're not looking for it, but let's come up with a music idea together. We always want to try to bring in things that are a little different.
I'll ask a slant question because I just want to get to it. This is like my question for you guys. Have we gone deep enough artistically yet? I'll mention it again just because I've got it here and it was top of mind. Lo and behold, the NetScout documentary that was made, I think is starting to scratch the surface. But the other night, a week ago, I watched The Defiant Ones on HBO. If that isn't an ad for Beats, I don't know what is. You know? And so whether or not that is, or the off-season Nike film with Kevin Durant training, like, how do we get there for brands? Can we? I mean, are those unique opportunities because the story of Dre and Ivine and Beats is just such a great, huge, rags to riches story? Or do we need to go there? Do we have to dig all the way back and go, I get your problem, let's deliver that for a client? Can we get there? Have we gotten there? Can we make that?
Yeah, I definitely think so. I mean, we started doing just these internal brainstorms, and sometimes we reach out to the creative community in Hollywood to come into that as well, and just, hey, let's come around, let's grab some beers, sit around, have lunch, and let's think about it. What I love about working closely with the entertainment industry and the creators, they're used to, coming up with ideas for an audience. They pitch to networks who have an audience, and so they know very well how to do that. And so I love that collaboration. That's the other thing too. I mean, we have some great creative people on our team. At the same time, I've seen it happen when great creatives also meet other great creatives. Some really interesting things start to happen. Yeah. And that's where we've seen kind of the magic.
Yeah, I would agree. That's the powerful thing I see starting to happen, because the consumer's demanding it. Look at the content that's everywhere and the great work being done by, who knew Amazon was going to be in this business, right? It's like, and it's just amazing what's in front of us. I see the possibilities, and I love being here because I'm learning how you guys think about your business and applying it to mine, right? And that's going to be the breakthrough.
Yeah, I mean, I think the potential's certainly there. It's finding the right opportunity, the right story, and the right brand, and navigating the entertainment space. I was having a conversation yesterday We've created this big, beautiful film that I'm very excited to have launched next year. And there's a conversation around when the brand should publicly be attached and how that should happen, because the entertainment community is kind of snobby, right? And if they know a brand has a heavy hand in something, it may not be taken seriously.
So you don't want to show a clip of it here?
But you know what I mean? So I think there's a balance there. You could be working with the most premium creator telling the most emotional, well-crafted story, and it's whether or not there's an appetite for that story to be told from a brand. And that goes a little bit to where I started with the, you get to start as the plus one. The brands you're talking about, Beats and Nike, sure, they are there. Other brands need to get there.
Yeah.
And it's a process.
It's a process. Good place to end as I get the hook from Rick.
Hook.
I don't know if we have a slide here, but we've got a couple questions that we're going to tee up for the group. I don't know if you need me to
We
say
can do
it.
that quickly, and then we're going to move to the discussion groups.
Great.
So do you have questions that you want to pose for the discussion groups?
They're right here. This is
They're
what
right
we're going to
there,
dig
yeah.
into.
Okay.
Does the term branded content help us or hurt us?
Okay.
Are brands fully committed yet? Are we fully committed yet? Agency side too. As leaders in the industry, how do we ensure this becomes an essential part of the creative and media approach together? And then why do you believe in it? Why are you here? Maybe we can get that lofty if we have, 1 minute left of the breakout, so we can figure out why we're here and what we need to do to make the discipline grow. Thank you guys so much.
Thanks
Thank you,
for the
Nick.
panel.
Thank you.
Great job. Thank you.